Hello and welcome to Outlaw Bookseller. I thought it was time for a channel update as we're now at 10,000 subscribers plus a few. I hope to sort of get to that before Christmas, so really by the sort of middle of December, because I was sick for much of December. I couldn't really get the output out there, but the videos which I did get out there went down well, so thanks everybody who contributed to that. Something that I want to do, I mentioned it on the channel some weeks ago in a sort of community post, is I want to do something about the science fiction writers and books you think are overrated. So do leave some comments below, and then hopefully I'll be able to gather them together and do a sort of reaction response to that. I'd love to know what you think is overrated. And in that sense, I mean you could have a book which is perfectly good, even excellent, but sometimes it'll get too much attention compared to more neglected books. So let's take, for example, Dan Simmons. If you look at a book like Hyperion, which everybody loves, I mean, I like Hyperion myself, don't get me wrong, and I like Dan Simmons, but I think it's personally overrated compared to, say, something like The Song of Kali, his first novel, which is rather underrated. Obviously, that's a horror novel, not an SF novel, but, you know, I'd like to know what you think. The overrated thing is important because, you know, everybody wants to read the bestsellers, but, you know, are they the best things? So taking a step back is a good thing. So yeah, we're in a slightly different angle here today because we're having some work done in the hideout and it's a bit shapeless. It tends towards the amorphous anyway. And as you can see, Smudge the cat is there making a guest appearance, doing nothing more interested than grooming. And as you see behind me, a lot of my Gollancz yellow jackets are obscured by things like dinosaurs and Daleks. Why Daleks? I don't know. That's sort of stuff that's going to be going this year, so I have a major clear out here as I try and make the hideout throughout the year more comfortable as a kind of man cave for the enjoyment of cultural artifacts, and also to sort of improve its looks as a sort of quasi studio. So it's going to take some work. A lot of that will involve getting rid of a lot of books, particularly other things as well. Books, I have way too many and I need to bring it right the way down, so I will be selling some books. I was hoping to be doing a book fair in early February with Morris at Zardos, All You Need Is Books in Westbury. Also attending will be Jules Burt and Dorset Bob, Mr. Book 451, and I wanted to get the ball rolling on this, and I suggested some dates. Unfortunately, the guys couldn't do the dates which I would like to do it on, because of course I have to think about my work and fitting that in, and that's an issue for Jules as well. So that will be happening. I think it's happening on Saturday the 8th of February, so there you go. Obviously I won't be there because I'm working, as I say, so it's a shame, but I won't be able to attend that even though I started the ball rolling, so we'll see. So maybe later in the year. I'm also going to be selling some stuff in Hay and putting a lot more on my eBay, Outlaw Bookseller, which I haven't really bothered with eBay for months and months. I sold some stuff off sort of late last year, mostly my Mick Heron collection, but I will be putting a lot of cracking stuff on there and maybe doing some selling on the channel as well. So that's coming up, and it's really just to try and slim things down and to sort of focus the final library, because some of us are getting on, you know, it is that way. So aside from that, 10,000 subscribers. What is it that makes this channel different to lots of others? That's something that I've put in the strapline, the description, because this channel is different to lots of other SF YouTube channels. The way it is, which is fundamentally different, is that I conceived it as a kind of reflection of an old school fanzine. And by that I mean that it would be amateur, it would be democratic, it would be done with whatever was to hand in terms of the technology and the means of production. And of course, fanzines, even though the word fan was used in sports circles going back to the very beginning of the 20th century, the term fanzine comes from science fiction usage, and science fiction fanzines started in the 30s. And they were the way that SF fans, genre SF fans communicated. You know, they communicated initially through the letters pages of magazines, but they also got fanzines together, and that was the dominant mode, you know, until social media came along, you know. And interestingly, fanzines, very often you could pick up an old school fanzine and there would be nothing in there about SF. It would just be about the community relationships between people writing fanzines and attending conventions and stuff. So you'd pick them up, and I've looked at all fanzines like this myself, and they're just about who's doing what with whom and what have you. There's sort of no sort of SF criticism content at all. So it kind of started like that, and was more like the sort of fanzine which I was involved with in Bath in the early 90s, which only ran for a few issues. And it was just sort of bring the things together and be part of the community thing, even though I do have my misgivings about how big and how communal the community really is on SF BookTube. Obviously, one has friends, one has already started doing that, like Jules Burt, and you meet people. I met Morris and Dorset Bob through that, and obviously other people like Richard Remple on Vintage SF, Matt at Bookpearl, and so on. So really it was to sort of have a more fanzine feel, and that's often why I go into other areas beyond SF. And the channel was always meant to try and break the mold and be interdisciplinary around culture, because I think science fiction fandom and SF YouTube can be a little bit too insular at times. Now, of course, that does affect your popularity. If I stuck just to SF, this channel probably would have grown more quickly and things, but I get bored if I just do that. I have to do that things. And I think growing bored with science fiction is quite an important thing, because if you're not getting bored with it, that means you're getting complacent and you're too satisfied with what is being, you know, spoon-fed to you, and you shouldn't be complacent. SF isn't about complacency. It's not about the same old thing. It should be about conceptual breakthrough and finding the new. And as you know, I feel that's a particular problem in our culture now. So that's why it's different. Also, it's different because I come from a professional perspective as a bookseller, which I've been for 40 years, as you know. So this is why this channel's different. And I don't do a lot of the clickbaity things. Yeah, I've done clickbait, but it's always been on my terms, the top 10s and what have you. And you see people every year updating their top 10 as they read more. Well, I'm older and or more widely read in SF than a lot of people do in SF BookTube, because I've sort of stuck with it, and I've read it over decades and decades and decades in, you know, in huge amounts, and obviously I work with it. So my journey is slightly different. Most people doing SF BookTube, they're near the beginning of their journey, or they're rediscovering things, or they're expanding what they've read, like say John at Sci-Fi Scavenger or Richard at Vintage SF. But with me it's different. I'm being more retrospective and more cynical and more critical of the thing as a whole, in a way. So it's slightly different. So my perspective is from a more experienced reader, and you know, I greatly enjoy seeing people's first reactions to books I read decades ago, and I've enjoyed going back to other things as well. So that's why I don't update things like my top 10s, top 20s, because they're not likely to change, to be honest. It's also why I don't do tier rankings. I don't keep a complete list of all the books I've read in a year. I don't think tier ranking is particularly helpful myself. I'm more interested, when I talk about books, in really presenting something which is qualitative rather than quantitative. Art isn't sport. It's not a game. There aren't winners and losers except in commercial senses. Really, it's all about the individuals meshing with the individual, the writer, creating the art, and those two things coming together. So you can read something and think it's absolutely brilliant and rate it really high personally, when the rest of the world just doesn't give a damn or doesn't understand it. So, you know, I'm not really interested in that. And also, I don't do a lot with the technical side. You notice the look of the channel hasn't changed much, because I think I work, not to say that other people don't work on content, but I really work on content, content authority, and a slightly different point of view. And I don't have the funds, I don't have the tech, and I don't have the sort of tech know-how sort of head to do a lot of innovations, bring things forward. For example, had I known I was going to do a YouTube channel when I bought my current PC, I bought that about a year before I started doing YouTube, I'd have bought a PC with 8K RAM, because I can film in HD on my GoPro, but I can't render in HD, so it's kind of pointless. And there's things like that, you know, there's a lot of things like that. And because I'm working as a bookseller, I've worked very hard on the channel. I've produced hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos, because I realized that because I don't go for the popular thing, and because I don't represent the mass market, and I'm not really interested in the mass market, and I'm not interested in appealing to the mass market, that I would have to do it through sheer hard work and volume and quality of getting the two things out there. So that's why I'm always saying watch the backlist and the skies, of course. So that's some ways in which this channel is different. Is it going to be different? Is it going to improve visually? It is a visual medium. Well, it's hard to say really. I have put a kind of lifespan on the channel. It's a 4-year lifespan, rather like the Replicants in Blade Runner. And I've said that I'm going to wind the channel up in September this year. It's really hard to say. It depends how enthused I get by the SF I read this year, new SF or SF I haven't read. It depends how, you know, I enjoy other reading. It depends on if I decide to take the channel broader in different directions. There's going to be a lot more about music on the channel, so I need to innovate to sort of include that. But really, it is hard to say that 4-year lifespan. I don't think I'd ever give up entirely. Even if I got to that point and stopped doing regular videos, I would update things now and again, because I think I've still got a lot to say about books and cultural production per se. So it'll probably go on beyond that, but that may well be the watershed. If I find that I can afford a bigger, better PC, if I can find the time to innovate more and do more flashy things, then I'll do them. But, you know, I don't really see them as a priority, and I simply can't afford them. You know, it's that simple. The thing is with YouTube, it's like life. There's an economic sort of reflection. If you begin with a lot of resources and some money behind you, then you're more likely to be a success. It's like if you're starting a business. One of the reasons why I never had my own bookshop, even though I thought of it and I was asked by people to go into business with them, not that I would have needed to because I had the expertise myself, really it's about capital. I could never afford the risk for capital, and because I knew the market really well and because I could see the way the market was changing, it was never the right time, so I never did it. So that's the thing. But if you've got lots of capital, you're from a wealthy family, or you've managed to acquire some money and you can afford to risk and lose a certain amount, you can crash your plane and walk away from it. For some of us, that isn't an option. You know, it's not. I'm not from a wealthy family. Wish I was. If I was, this would be a far bigger house and this would all be more gleaming and beautiful. But it's the content that counts. So it is like that. So, you know, I see a lot of people on BookTube who've got beautiful houses and they've got lovely studio setup and they've got a tiny amount of books, you know. And you know, not that I'm jealous, you know, but I am envious. I'd love a bigger house, as I keep saying, because then, you know, it'd be more comfortable and I could present a more beautiful thing for you. But I try and do that with what comes out of my head, you know, with the content and the sort of more interdisciplinary way I approach things. So that's some of the ways which this channel is different. What else is there to say about 10,000 subscribers? It's you know, it's been quite a journey. It's been great to sort of have people who've supported me from very early on, who's still commenting all the time. The club room, the membership thing is going really well. Almost 10% of the number of people who subscribed are now members. It's $4.99 a month. There's an exclusive video every week. And of course, what's happening? I started that at the beginning of September, and that's gradually building up. And it means that there's a backlist there. So if you join, there's a whole load of videos to watch, and there's sort of all sorts of things. What's coming up, something that's coming up, is a bit of Philip K. Dick. This is The Golden Man, which is a collection mostly of Dick's early works, and this is a Methuen book from the 80s. And if you watch Richard Rempel at Vintage SF, or Matt Defoe at Science Fiction Reads, or Ira at SF Words of Wonder, you'll have seen they do this thing. They're working through the Ballantine best-ofs, and they've covered lots of writers, and they're doing Philip K. Dick, and they invited me to come on board with them, so it'll be a full way. That's going to be probably shown on Richard's channel, I think. I'm not sure yet. End of January, early February. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be great because I correspond with all the guys, and Richard and I have done sort of a face-to-face interview over the net. Focus on Keith Roberts particularly. So it's going to be good, and it's got me back into reading Dick's early short stories, some of which I haven't read since the 80s, and it's been a real pleasure. It really has. So I'm looking forward to that. Scott Bradfield and I have made some initial plans to do a one-on-one, a chat, but he'll be in California and I'll be here in the southwest of England. There'll probably be more collabs coming up. I quite like doing them. I'm really sort of always nervous about the tech, about the downloads working and everything, so we'll see. And what else is going to come up on the channel soon? I've said that there won't be much here in January, and being quite honest about that, because of course YouTube, what you earn on YouTube is depending on advertising revenue, and the advertisers pay out far less in January than they do the rest of the year. So you can pump out a load of videos and not make much money to sort of cover your costs and your time. So last year, I think in January, I did 6 videos. It's hard to say what I'll do in January this month. I may only do 2, 3, 4. It's hard to say. A lot of it will be dependent on mood, because of course, as I say, I make an exclusive video every week for channel members for the club room. So there's 4 I'm committed to. So anything else is on top of that. So we'll see. So the Philip K. Dick thing will be coming up. There'll be a thing with Scott. What else? I'm sure there's more things to talk about. Looking back at last year, everybody is doing these things of, you know, best books I read, worst books I read. You know, it's not something that I'm up for doing, really. Highlights of last year, I should say the highlights of last year for me were, you know, meeting up with Michael Moorcock for the first time in decades in Paris and chatting with Mike. That was great. My favourite artistic moment of the year was seeing the band called the Big Tusk at the Duc de Lombard's, a jazz club in Paris, and they were fantastic. I've been in touch with the guys. They're brilliant. Do watch their set, which is a few months back in September, I posted half an hour of their set, which is a kind of jazz, improv, rock, electronica crossover. And they're lovely guys from Switzerland. That was a real peak for me. I really loved that, and it was great to see Mike. In terms of the downsides of the year, well, sadly, as I've said before, it is the twilight of the idols. You know, a lot of the great SF writers are passing away, and back at the beginning of February, my old friend Christopher Priest passed away, which I knew was coming, and he'd mentioned, you know, the inevitability to me in his last email, and you know, it was very sad. We knew it was coming, and you know, we'd been friends for a long time, since 1987. Also, you know, there were several other people passed away last year, Brian Stableford as well. And then just before Christmas, Barry N. Malzberg. You know, the loss of Malzberg and Priest is kind of really major sort of things, you know. So that brings down now, for me, my favourite SF writers over a certain age, over the age of 75, who are still going. Silverberg is there. He's not producing, but he's still going strong. Delaney is still there. He's not really producing anything. There's Norman Spinrad, I think, is still producing. Michael Moorcock is still producing things. And M. John Harrison, I think Mike's about 77 now. He's got a new book out in February. You know, so these are my sort of, you know, my guys, really. So it's a very sobering thing to consider. So there's a little channel update, just to chat. I hope you've enjoyed seeing Smudgington. Let's see if we can get it to come. Oh, are you okay, Smudge? Wasn't expecting that. There she is. Do you want to say something to the camera? No, absolutely not. Shocking, isn't it, really? There you go, look, come on. Say hi to all your fans. How is it that people make all these YouTube videos where they capture cats doing all sorts of things? All she seems to do is sleep. I produce a camera and that's it. Hello, you okay? No, she said, you've rudely awakened me. So with that rude awakening, I'll leave you to it. As you see, she's right next to Albert Camus. Maybe that's telling her something. And all this junk, of course, all over my stuff. What can you do? You know, your cat's in charge. It's that simple. I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for helping me get to 10,000 subscribers. And bye for now.